Okay, so welcome everyone to the show. With me today, my guest is someone who has spent some time behind bars, and that's not merely because he's originally from Croydon. Fahd is a qualified dentist and worked with Her Majesty's Prison Service in the precarious position of examining the teeth of inmates. I could spend the whole show just talking about that alone, but I want to get Fahd to speak about his experience of raising peer-to-peer debt finance for his commercial to residential conversion project in Wellingborough. And related to that is in July 2018, Fahd and his business partner, Sreelal Harilal, launched Provident Homes with the mission to build 100 design-led energy efficient homes per year. So I'm keen to do a deep dive into those the crowdfunding and also his experiences and also Provident Homes. So welcome to the show, Dr. Fahd Khan.
Thank you so much, Tariq, for having me. Thank you.
Great. So Fahd, let's dive straight into it. Can you share with us some details about the project and the amount that you raised through crowdfunding?
Yeah, no problem. So the project is a Victorian shoe factory in Wellingborough, quite a landmark building. We purchased the building for just over £800,000. The GDV is going to be north of 3.3 million. And yeah, so we worked with Blend Network, and our first raise on their platform was for £460,000. They provided half the money basically for the bridging purchase, and now they're providing 100% development funding, circa in the region of 1.6 million.
So that's interesting. And I think it's going to be converted into, is it 24 or 26 apartments?
It's 24 apartments. They're 21 bedrooms and 4 2-bedrooms. That's right.
What led you to consider crowdfunding to raise funds for this project rather than, more traditional bank finance?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as it was Provident Homes' first development, we wanted to understand the senior debt process by working directly with the lender, which offered us full transparency. We recognized the emergence of crowdfunding as having a bright future in the development finance space, and we wanted to be part of that early movement, so to speak.
Okay, interesting. And there's quite a few crowdfunding platforms out there. What was the process that you guys followed in terms of choosing Blend to go with? I mean, first of all, there's two types of crowdfunding platforms you can go with, either debt or equity. Here you clearly made a conscious choice to go with debt. Can you walk us through the rationale in first deciding debt over equity, and then also, or did you maybe even consider actually doing equity crowdfunding as well? And then secondly, why Blend, amongst all the other platforms that are out there?
Sure. Okay. So there's about 2-3 questions rolled into one there. So with traditional lending, typical banks don't provide you access to decision makers. They tend to move at a slow pace. They're often too conservative with risk versus reward appetite, which is required as a fundamental when you're dealing with developments. It's not like other asset classes. There is obviously inherent risk with contracting and developing. So if people are going to be in that industry, they need to be more familiar with the relative risk, etc. With this particular crowdfunding option, there's high loan to GDV being offered, and it's provided as a single product rather than traditional methods of going for your senior debt, your mezzanine, and potentially stretch senior. And it also incurs additional fees for every product you go for. So this was kind of an all-in-one product. So it's simplistic from our perspective. And crowdfunding also provided us the ideal platform to establish a solid track record in the public domain and build credibility, with a pool of investors that would be interested in following our progress. And also the fact that crowdfunding is typically very rapid, the speed of funding, the speed of decision making versus traditional lending. And why Blend, or how did we go about identifying that particular platform? We're part of some great developing clubs in London, which allowed us to strengthen our network with some top people in the industry. This allowed us to create a good relationship with many of the crowdfunding platforms, including Blend. And we also looked into their track record themselves, the sort of projects they've lent on previously, because that's important for us to de-risk our lending, is all to see how many chances there are of default from the lenders, from the developers that they're lending to, etc. So their loan book, the health of their loan book is really important to us. And then it comes down to the human side of it. I built up quite a good relationship with Paul Watson of Blend, who's the head of origination there. Very likable chaps, and because they've not been going for 20 years, they're relatively new, 5 years or less. They take a very reasonable approach. They have relative experience. So Daniel has been a developer. Paul's been involved in property, so they understand what it's like to be on the ground. So it was important from our perspective to feel like we were understood and we were talking the same language. They showed genuine interest in the project, and we felt that they would support us as developers and be understanding through any difficulties and challenges which inherently occurs as a part of this daily business. They humanized the process, and rather than making it feel cold and corporate, we always felt we could pick up the phone and have a reasonable discussion. And then, the details come down to looking at the terms, the interest rates, and the lending criteria, and the security. But in essence, they're a great company to work with, and they're people that you can build that relationship with.
That's quite interesting feedback, which partly kind of answers the other question I had for you, which is what the overall experience of crowdfunding was like. But let me ask a slightly different question, since you kind of answered that already. When you guys were looking at the various crowdfunding platforms, you would have probably made initial inquiries with multiple crowdfunding platforms, and then eventually decided to go with Blend because of the experiences that you had. I'm curious to know what was your overall impression from the other platforms that you may have approached. What's kind of stood out for you in the way that kind of Blend handled your inquiry?
They all offer something slightly different. Without name dropping, they're all great platforms, and I think we would like an opportunity to work with all of them, because only once you really worked with them can you really see what it's like behind the scenes. Because on the face of it, some might have a huge marketing budget, and others have impressive track records, but until you've been through the process with them, dealt with their people, it's really hard to know the difference. So for us, there was only two choices, and they're the two probably main players in the crowdfunding space. They both showed interest, but Blend, because they were a little bit earlier in their journey, I felt that they were more hungry for our business, or they were more aligned to our values. Whereas I think the other crowdfunding platform, clearly very successful, and we'd love to work with them, but we didn't feel that we were significant enough for them at this point in our journey. I think once we're down to our fourth and fifth project, where we're a known quantity, then I think people will take us more seriously. But because we're still very new, in all honesty, we liked the fact that Len didn't see that as a disadvantage. They saw that as an opportunity to grow with us at this early stage, and want to win the business at this point, and helping us grow as we expand. So it was really important that we felt supported from the ground up. That's the main reason we chose this platform at this particular time.
That's quite interesting, because I think even if you were to look outside of crowdfunding finance, you were looking at more traditional banks for finance, for development, and what have you. Even they will look at your experience and your track record as a qualifier to whether it's the type of loan book that they want to take on. So with some, let's say larger or more kind of focused development finance lenders, they might prefer to work with somebody who's much more experienced, and therefore might filter you out. And it appears that a similar sort of rationale you kind of looked at or imposed in terms of looking at crowdfunding platforms as well? Those who are perhaps a little bit more established or been around or have done a larger loan book might not be as supportive for you guys as a more recent addition to the crowdfunding scene, who are more likely to support you through your journey as they are going through their journey as well. So that's quite interesting feedback. I want to also ask, I'm a big believer in black box thinking by Matthew Side. I like to try and eke out the lessons learned from any experience, especially the bad ones, because they are the ones that teaches us the most, both in life and career and in business. So from your experience going through the crowdfunding cycle, what were some of the things that you kind of thought with Sreelal that actually, now that we've gone through that process, we've sat down, had a cup of tea, we've reflected, and we think that actually some of these things we could have done better, or it could have been handled better, as part of the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And if we could have gone back and done things differently, I don't think we could have done things differently. But what we've learned from going through the process is understanding the level of due diligence that the banks will undergo before, during, throughout the whole process. And although we had a very strong power team, which is why we got the lending in the first place, the cross-coordination between all parties, the indemnity policies, making sure basically everything was tied together and ribbon wrapped, packaged in a very slick manner. That was something we weren't really educated on how we represent. We knew what was happening on the ground, but how that translates to making the lender understand what's happening on the ground and making sure that the QS that comes on site can see what we're doing and can report back to the lender to say, these guys know what they're doing because of this, this, and this. It's very different when you've got the idea in your head and you're delivering it on site, but you need to have the feedback and the reporting presented in a certain way that makes the drawdowns far more efficient. So we've had a few delays on our end because they've asked for certain information presented in a certain manner, which we probably weren't experienced with previously, but we now know before even getting started to plan your cash flow throughout the build, and knowing when you're going to require what report at what time, etc. So it's been a great learning curve. And we've spoken to other lenders, and we've spoken to other developers that have been through the journey, and they probably haven't had to go through as many hoops. So for us, going through that level of sense checking on a first project means we're only going to be more robust in our processes for the second one. So I think we've benefited hugely from being under scrutiny. At the end of the day, Blend have many lenders that lend on their platform, and they have to make sure that these people that they're qualifying the developer throughout every process. It's not institutional funding, it's not family office. Lots of people's money is at stake, and they have to make sure that they're demonstrating that it's been vetted. So yeah, it's not been a disadvantage, it's been an education.
Great. Fahd, that's been quite helpful. I want to change track slightly and ask you a little bit about your vision board. I get the feeling that your vision board, unlike a lot of us, is more than just a board. I came across a video that you, Sreelal and Elena, I think, shared on your Facebook page, and something that you said, what you were talking about was very interesting to me, and I wanted to try and pull on that particular thread a little bit, if you don't mind. So I get the feeling that your vision board is something that's very, very tangible. Talk me through that, talk me through your next sort of 10 or 15 years, what that looks like and what your kind of vision board looks like for you.
Wow. We have big ambitions, one from a business perspective, and where Provident Homes needs to be within a few years. And as you read, one of our early mission statements was to develop 100 energy efficient design-led homes, but it's expanded far more than that. Me and Elena in particular are from healthcare backgrounds, and we are all decent earners in our day jobs. The reason that we're interested in property and the reason why we're following this journey is to create prosperity for others that are less fortunate than ourselves, to give one a sense of purpose and fulfillment, etc. So we now have a big purpose to fulfill with social housing and philanthropy. We see property as a vehicle to, one, address a current demand in the UK, which is a housing shortage. Two, to provide better quality accommodation for those who need it most, so those who are starting off, affordable homes, etc. And then three, once we get to a certain level, we do wish to really create medical facilities in developing countries to give back to those who need it most. And there's a big disconnect between first world countries and developing countries. So we really want to create a more ethical development business that's based its grassroots in providing a direct feedback. I don't know if you come across buy one, give one, but a similar concept that we've come up with, which we're still ironing out and it's not yet to be launched, but the plan for the next couple of years is to create a system where we build one. Every time someone buys a house from us, we build another house in a developing country. So buy one, build one. So in essence,
sorry to interrupt, but it's in a way it's kind of similar to Tom's shoes, and so you buy a pair of shoes from Tom's, and they then donate a pair in a developing country. Similar sort of thought process, I understand. Okay.
Absolutely. Because it's hard to have a direct translation between what you're doing in the UK and property development and how you can affect the lives of other people in other countries. So it doesn't actually cost that much money to build a house in a developing country. So we thought, we can definitely create a link between these two, and it will give us more incentive to excel and chase our goals and ambitions, because it means it's going to help more people than just ourselves.
That's great. Okay, that's quite interesting, and certainly a big challenge in a way as well, because to deliver on a great project here as well, but then also generate enough profit to actually fund a foundation, in effect, to fund the development of or construction of houses out in the developing nations. That's quite a monumental task, and my hats off to you guys. I think it's a great initiative, and certainly I wish you best of success. Fahd, tell me, from your own sort of personal perspective, what does the next 10 or 15 years look like for you?
We want to be in a position, as I said, where we're developing 100 homes a year. We hope to retain 50% of the units that we develop to create a portfolio for ourselves. The other 50% selling in the open market. We see ourselves, or we already are partnering with housing associations at the moment for larger sites. We want to move more into assisted living and help provide that level of accommodation that is significantly lacking for those who are in more need. We've partnered with a housing charity to provide houses for the homeless. So we have a current requirement that we're looking to fill. So the next 10 years, Provident Homes will be a household name, not on the level of a national house builder, because we're not aiming for quantity, we're aiming for quality. And the USP that we're trying to bring forward is the heart of healthy homes. So where the individual in the home, everything's designed around them in terms of light, amenities, well-being. There's fragmented communities, increasing mental health issues. So we want to create the home to be the sanctuary, as well as being energy efficient, etc. So we want to really create a USP around what we're doing, healthcare and property development are going to come hand in hand, and that's going to be what we look to deliver. And then it's a case of I'll become an ambassador and try and focus on our projects abroad in these developing countries, while probably Sreelal and Yelena handle on the ground work in this country. I see myself focusing more on giving back and building the bridge to those countries. That's where my primary passions lie, and for myself to become a good role model for my children, who I want to have the same sorts of values.
And Fahd, I can't let you go without asking you about your experience of working in the prison service, if you don't mind. What kind of prompted that move? That sounds very interesting to me. And what was the experience like working within the prison service as a dentist?
Even now to date, over 10 years in my career, I've done a lot in dentistry, lots of high-end cases, smile makeovers. They've all been satisfying, but I've never had as much fun as I've had working in prison. And that sounds like a strange thing to say, but I grew up in South London, in quite a deprived neighborhood. And I've never ever seen inmates as a lesser type of person. In fact, the difference between myself and them would just be down to a couple of decisions. I can easily have seen myself heading down that route had I not had the right influence. And a lot of these people have just been in the wrong place and the wrong time, and they've ended up where they are. And in fact, we don't know if we're going to the shops, who we come into contact with day to day. You don't know what they've done. So I'd never try to judge a book by its cover, and I try and rehabilitate people, connect with them. And I've had the most satisfaction impacting the lives of people who treat them as humans rather than animals in a cage. And I feel that sort of rehabilitation has to start from a very basic level. Treat other people how you wish to be treated yourself. So I have always had massive reward, and in prison they don't pay for their treatment. So it's just, there's no targets to hit. You just focus on healthcare, and it's the purest form of giving back, because everything else, unfortunately, in dentistry is business orientated. It's either time related or money related. So I love the fact that you just remove all those metrics and you focus on what we were taught to do. And the Hippocratic Oath was to do no harm, and always to have the patient's best interest at heart. So I like the fact that it's a chance for me to just do pure healthcare.
That's a great Fahd, and I can really sense that that value system which stems from that working within the prison system is a symptom, if I can put it that way, or of the reflection of the value system that you hold, and that's also being carried through to the Provident Homes and the mission statement that Provident Homes has, and also the partners that you're working with. I recognize that you alluded to this in passing, but I think it's actually quite a big part of Provident Homes business model, which is working with social housing providers. And in fact, my understanding is that you have some social housing associations who are already kind of signed up with you guys to task you guys to go out and find sites and build it out for them, so you have a ready exit onto social housing. Does that sound right?
That's absolutely right. And we're very lucky, again, to be able to have cultivated and nurtured those relationships. We've got a great network of people that we're working with. To give you a little bit of an insight as to what we're working on at the moment, our next development project was supposed to be another factory conversion to 26 units. So we're now working very closely with the Housing Association. We're probably going to redesign the scheme to create larger units to fit their criteria. But that will be a collaboration where we'll deliver a package for the Housing Association, and that's going to be for shared ownership and affordable homes. That same Housing Association we're doing a second and a third site with. The second one is some land that we've taken an option on. We've done a feasibility study to assess that we can get a minimum of 22 houses, and we've entered into an agreement with them, and they will be taking the site forward and to deliver between 25 to 28 affordable housing units. So we're partnering with them on that. And we've actually helped promote some land which is beyond our scope to deliver, which is close to 4 acres. We've managed to get into an agreement and promote that piece of land, and that's going to now become a 90-bed extra K unit with 14 over 55 bungalows as well. When, you know, as I was preparing for this call, me and Sreelal were discussing it yesterday, and we tallied up what sort of projects we're involved in. And although it only feels like we're on 1 or 2 active sites, in terms of the projects we've been involved in and have a part to play in to date, I was quite shocked when I realized we're going to be bringing forward or contributing a pipeline to bring 250 homes to the market, which I was quite surprised about. I didn't think our pipeline was that strong, but in one way or another, or one collaboration or another, I think that's a pretty decent return for a small company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, it's testament to the value system and the mission statement that you guys have and the partnerships that you've built with, you know, especially, you know, housing associations. And I think part of the reason why I wanted to dive into crowdfunding is, you know, from my own perspective as a investor / lender, I wanted to lend through crowdfunding platforms, and I wanted to understand, well, who are the developers out there who are raising funds through crowdfunding, what's the motivation, what is the pipeline that's coming through, and also, you know, what is the exit. And I think here particularly it's quite attractive that there's, you know, a social housing partnership already built and potentially, you know, providing an exit to your development. So it you know, works quite well in that regard. As somebody in a previous interview said to me, you know, every business is going to need finance because finance is rocket fuel to achieve your aspirations, and the lack of finance is going to hold you back in many ways. So does other resources, for example, like personnel and technology and those sort of things. But certainly finance is a relatively easy fix to have, and the fact that crowdfunding is out there means that, you know, it provides an additional layer of opportunity in terms of raising finance for developers, especially like Provident Homes, when there's a great pipeline, there's a great mission statement, and there's great partnerships, which, you know, it hedges some of the risk for investors and lenders. And I think, you know, it's a great proposition. Fahd, thank you very much for your time. It's been really enjoyable. What's, you know, in terms of parting words, what was, you know, if I was to ask you for a roundup, you know, what would you say to the audience?
I'd say, you know, developing is being product developer is not an easy thing. It's a very challenging space to enter into. So if you're involved in any way, shape, or form, whether it's from the lending, whether it's developing or providing equity, support the people you're working with, network with people, collaborate, be open, because there's a massive requirement in this country, and there's no shortage of opportunities. So I don't believe in competition, I believe in synergy. So yeah, just support one another. It's and if we all come together and work together, then we can really address this 300,000 housing shortfall that we have in this country.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you very much, Fahd. Thank you for your time on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Tarek. Thank you.